Hi, Mama.
Hi, sweetie. So good to see you. Welcome to all our listeners to the Mother Daughter Download, a podcast where this mother daughter duo meet at the intersection of leadership and sociology. We are on opposite coasts and of different generations. My name is Lisa. I'm a former HR leader and working now as an executive coach and consultant.
Yes, and I'm Alex. I'm a sociology professor in the DMV area. Together, my mom and I examine workplace dynamics through a human-centered and impact-driven lens. Our conversations are grounded in lived experience, research, and our ongoing growth. We're not claiming universal truths. We're just offering reflections, insights, and questions so that we can grow alongside with you.
And this is episode 8 of the Mother Daughter Download. And we have our first guest, Greg Leach, a former sales leader who chose to exit corporate to center his health and well-being. His story integrates many of our recent topics, including burnout and perfectionism.
Yes, I'm super excited about our first guest. So we invite you to engage with us. Please share your insights and questions in the comment section below. As a reminder to our listeners, you can find all of our podcasts on the Mother Daughter Download YouTube channel, and you'll also find references and resources in the description of this video below. With that, please do like, subscribe so you can keep up with our new videos, and share with your friends. With that, let's dig in.
Welcome, Greg. We are so delighted to have you as our first guest. So I will not overindulge in the introduction as you will share your story, yet I do want to share that you are a dear friend, former colleague who is wicked smart for our Boston friends. Introspective, consistently seeks to make a difference for self and others. And more recently, we've had the coolest conversations about our work journeys, the messiness of life, and the exchange of really good books. So we're really happy you're here.
Yes. And so, Greg, I understand that you are thinking about sharing your journey and your story with others, whether that's corporate, academia, conferences. You have lots of different options and opportunities, but we're really lucky and grateful that you're starting off with that concept here on the Mother Daughter Download. I was definitely fascinated by the summary that you sent me and some of the stories that you shared earlier, and I look forward to hearing a little bit more about those. But let's start off with a brief background on you. You can kind of walk us through from entering corporate to leaving it, and then we'll talk a little bit more about your battle with stress and health, and that transition to focusing on rest and wellness.
Awesome. Yeah. God, I'm truly honored to be the first guest. I'm psyched. I'll always have that. And congratulations on the podcast, obviously. So I've watched all your episodes, and I think that the subjects you're touching on are really important and are only going to become more important to actually talk about out loud as we move forward into this sort of totally new world of work and everything that's in front of us. So I applaud you both for doing it, and it's fun and it's awesome that you guys get to spend some time together doing this. So I really admire what you both are doing. So yeah, thanks for the intro. As you stated, our story started in Boston, born in the late 70s, lower middle class Irish Catholic family in Southie. For those that know all of the stuff that brings along with it. For some reason, it's a mystery to me how my parents had such high expectations of me and my sister, just because it wasn't sort of around us. And so my sister and I are almost 5 years apart. We both went to the same Catholic elementary school in Southie before attending Boston Latin, which we would both say has had such a huge impact on both of us and expanded our worlds beyond Southie. Um, I then went to a small liberal arts college, Stonehill, about 30 miles south of Boston. And obviously, that's kind of around their age where people start figuring out their plans. And, I was not that somebody. Unfortunately, my parents were like, okay, go get a job. So I did not know what I wanted to do as far as work goes. But I knew whatever I was doing, I needed to figure out a way to do it well, or else. That's what my dad used to say, or else. while trying to figure out what it was that I was going to do, I did some temp jobs. I volunteered for a few politicians on some campaigns in Boston. And I know, Alex, you'll have some sort of sociology lingo around this, but through the connections that I made on the political campaigns and people that we knew in Southie, that was such a close-knit community.
Little social capital.
Yeah, social capital. Thank you. Um, so through one of those connections, I just got an interview at a local television station in the ad sales department, which, I didn't really know much else about. And honestly, the rest was sort of history, because I spent the next 20 years in that business. So um, looking back, I would say I guess it's a little bit of through the perfectionism, through the parents and the expectations and all of that, combined with my communications degree and my relationship skills, that I was able to thrive in the advertising, marketing, business that I sort of found myself in, and I was able to move up very quickly. Um, I was promoted 8 times in 18 years at 2 different companies, and ultimately ended up at my hometown in Boston Regional Sports Network selling sponsorships. And in a few short years after getting there, I was running the entire department. So, on paper, this was like something straight out of, a storybook. It was absolutely dream job. Truly, this is a true story. I grew up breaking into Fenway to go see the Red Sox. And then by the end of my career, I had a pass to come and go as I pleased, and ultimately ended up with 2 World Series rings, one of which I was able to gift to my dad
Mhm.
because it had our name on it, so it's the same name.
That's
Um,
sweet.
so, and he would get emotional about it every time we talked about it, every time he would wear it out in San Diego where he lived. And he was just over the moon about it.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, even though again, everything was just like, I was just beaming telling you the story because it really was that, right? It was that. It was everything that I just hope I conveyed in a couple of sentences where, um, everyone in my whole orbit was just so happy to be able to sort of participate in this thing that we all probably over admire in this country. But, it is what it is, right? It's the Red Sox. It's a little bit different. It goes beyond just, sort of sports. So
Yeah.
yeah, even though it was all great, um, I wasn't paying attention to anything related to my well-being or my balance. So in the last year, I was working, some really wild things started happening to my body and to my health. Um, and that's when things sort of took a turn.
Yeah.
So
And Greg, I was fortunate to be a colleague of yours. And again, to watch your success, you were loved and adored by your team. And again, tremendously respected within all those uh, fascinating and sometimes challenging executives that you partnered with, and you made some really good things happen. Again, you were truly wildly successful by those external measures. So curious for you to share a little bit of, yes, you were successful, and but I also started to hear you opened a bit about what you were struggling with, and wondering if you'll open up a little bit and share what were some of those markers and indicators for you that you're like, there's something wrong here.
yeah, yeah, it's a tough one, right? So throughout my career, I would say that I was not super focused on my health. I wasn't super healthy. It was a pretty sedentary job to begin with, right? It's an office job, even though we're sort of in and out of the office on calls. Like you're going from an office chair to your conference room chair to your car chair to your, all these different chairs. So it didn't leave a lot of time to go out and take care of myself. And as we all know, we live in, I know Alex has also coined the term, maybe not coined it, but uses the term, the grind culture. Like we're definitely in this world of go, go, go. And I did not even, it wasn't even in my universe to understand the concept of listening to your body. Um, you know, if I was tired, I would sleep, right? If I'm hungry, I would eat. But the language of physical need is so much greater than just those two things, and it's not overt. Um, and we're never taught how to listen to the more subtle languages of the body. I just assumed that whatever was going to happen would happen, and I'll just sort of shut up and grind through it, right? So, from weight fluctuations, and it happened to be at the end that I was the heaviest I had been, which obviously then comes with its own set of sort of health concerns,
Right.
um, to migraines, sleep apnea, anxiety, normal colds and flus that would take on a life of their own and end up as a sinus infection or an ear infection, um, to being diagnosed with an autoimmune disease that totally crushed, my immune system and nervous system. Um,
Did you
you
just
know,
keep working through it while you were dealing with that?
well, what I did, which is what everyone does, right? I don't think I'm unique at all, right? What we do is the first one, weight fluctuation, right? So what do? We diet, we exercise, but like we don't do them with an awareness of like I said, the subtleties of the body. We just do it for the end goal. We're not doing it for the
Mhm.
journey of how to get there, which is
Right.
really where all the gold is, right?
Yes.
Um, so, migraines, which we'll get into, and I'm sure in a second, but like I had migraines since I was a kid.
Mhm.
What did I do with that? I kind of just learned to live with it. My dad had them, my sister had them, my nieces now have them.
Mhm.
And I would say, looking back on it, these are some of the saddest of these stories because truly, after I got over the migraines, and I would have like one random headache, over the last four years or so, there was something super comforting about it. And to think
Mhm.
about a headache being comfortable in any way is wild. Like that is just it's such a painful thing. Yet, because I was so familiar with them,
Mhm.
it was the familiarity of it, right? So,
I feel like
um,
struggling emotionally or physically is just so normalized. Like you said, it's I'm not special. Like everybody has these issues, so I just have to
I'm
deal
looking
with
at
it.
the next one, sleep apnea. Guess what I did, right? I got a mask, right? Which didn't work.
It's all like
Anxiety,
solving like the symptoms or dealing
and
with symptoms
totally.
rather than the root
And
cause.
then the big one that manifested literally probably, I don't know, 8 times a year was colds and flus. And I'm out there shaking hands and kissing babies, as they say, and I'm out at the suite entertaining clients and traveling on airplanes. And, it's just a germ factory everywhere. And because my immune system was not good, I'd get this cold or flu that normally I'd be able to fight off. But guess what? Because I couldn't fight it off, it would turn into a sinus infection or ear infection. And then
Right.
what happened? I got surgery for a sinus, issue, which I probably didn't need, right? So
Yeah.
the answer to your question is I do what you would think, which is just sort of mask them with all the over the counters that are available for the
Yeah.
thousands of things that can go wrong. So um
Do you think that cognitive dissonance played a role there at all? Because I know that you had mentioned I like this quote. You said your mind can lie to you, but your body cannot. So I was curious about, yeah, some of the ways that maybe you were talking yourself out of that, or the moment where you were like, okay, maybe this isn't normal. I do need to acknowledge this and start to rewire my thought process.
yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. You're giving the clinical psychological term, for it, which is cognitive dissonance. It's funny, I remember learning about cognitive dissonance when I was in high school and always thinking about it with as it relates to cigarettes. And now that I've learned so much more about the term, there's a lot more to it than simply knowing something is bad for you and doing it anyway. There's more to it than that, right? So, um,
Yeah, it's almost like don't acknowledge or recognize that it's bad for you because you're doing so much to convince yourself that it's normal because that's what it's always been or what your family is dealing with. So,
right. Yeah,
yeah.
and I remember hearing some definition of it. It says something along the lines of like, your mind will sort of make up the logic to get you from your needs
Mm.
to your actions. right? So
Mm.
that was kind of my understanding of it, which I mean, yes, literally my entire world was that, I guess, right? Because I needed a lot and I was giving zero, right? So it was kind of crazy. So yeah, I collected these health conditions, and I had a list of them because that's my OCD part of me meeting my unhealthy part of me, which is like, wait, I have that too. I have that too. Um, so all the while I was just taking medications. Um, but in the meantime, I mean, I was literally killing it in my career, right? So some of the largest sponsorship deals in the history of advertising, leading some of the most talented employees to their own sort of management roles, career successes, financial windfalls, whatever it was. Um, it was all good, but I had sort of ignored all the signs and communication that we were just talking about that the body was sending, and it was working for that part of my life, um, until it didn't. That's what the cognitive dissonance was, right? It was like my mind telling me, like, oh, it's just a headache. Oh, it's
Right.
hereditary. Your dad has it. Your sister has it. You know what I
Even with
mean?
you saying like, oh, you would have one every 6 months, and now it's like, oh my God, every day. It's like, what, whoa, this has gone beyond what is even been normal for me.
Totally. Yeah. And that's really when it got to the place where it didn't work anymore. So, um, the final sort of straw, related to health was related to, it sounds crazy to say this out loud, but I developed jaw pain. Um, and I had it every day. Um, and if you've ever had jaw pain, like it's not even like a pain where you like if I had a headache, I'd be like, I have a headache. But when you have jaw pain, you don't know what it is, right? You just feel uncomfortable. Your whole body feels uncomfortable. And then when you pause and you sort of take some time to figure out like what's wrong, you end up thinking about the connection between your jaw and your skull, like, wow, there's like random pain there. It's like sore, it's aching. And then after a few weeks or months, it becomes like a chronic pain, right? Like that's different, that deep sort of
Mm.
pain. And it was in my face. And it was so uncomfortable. And I was kind of just like, yeah, no, something's wrong. Um,
I'm sorry you have to
and
deal with
Yeah.
that. That sounds
Yeah.
horrendous.
Yeah.
yeah, and the
And
funny thing is if we get to it, the day that I resigned, not I didn't leave the company. I stayed on for, I don't know, 3 months, 4 months. The day I resigned, 2 hours later, the jaw pain was gone.
it's amazing. It's absolutely
Uh,
amazing. And Greg, I want to ask you, and you mentioned this phrase just a short time back about this pushing through, which is what you did, right? And I think we're socialized to do so. And I think there's a tremendous amount of pressure and expectation on men, kind of normalized to just do that. And you said this as well. It's like, it's a new thing to kind of talk about it. So I'm curious about what would be your advice for men like you who are doing the I'm just pushing through? And this, of course, it relates to women as well, but your own lived experience and yeah, what are your thoughts? And you can even talk to yourself years back. Like, what's the advice to this sense of pushing through and ignoring jaw pain, migraines? You talked about weight gain.
I also just wanted to say that, like, on top of, it being normalized for men, those illnesses where they're not visible tend to be more stigmatized and less accepted because, you can't see it and it's internal, so I think that makes it even more difficult.
Yeah, and so I'll start with that, right? Because what Alex said is just it's so true, right? So talking about it, which ultimately is one of the things that I would recommend for anybody, and it doesn't have to be talking about like in therapy, just talking about it in general. To answer your question, Lisa, about like what would I say to people trying to push through it, um, I would say you pause. Like that's the thing that has to get done, right? Because yeah, you can push through it and the results will be good. If you're a high performer, the results are going to be good, and but they're not going to last. They can't be repeated because you're going to deteriorate at the same time. So I'm not saying everyone needs to stop working, I'm just saying everyone needs to sort of like pause and then start to listen to what's going on inside you, um, because your body is sending you messages. And 99% of us just don't listen. Um, a huge percentage probably because we didn't know that that was a thing. Um, and then once you do, once you start down that road, it's so eye-opening and so many things start to be opened up, and you start to wonder, where was all this information? Why didn't we get that information? It would have been really helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, we do. And that's why, education, not only, academic, but emotional education and learning how to communicate is really important. It needs to be taught to people at a young age, boys and girls, and, you know, make sure that those expectations are fair. Again, especially for men who are expected to hold it in. But, off of that, I really do appreciate you and your vulnerability and being able to share, those feelings of shame and embarrassment and having to kind of bottle it up. And I think that it's really inspiring to see this transition to pride and confidence regarding health, and your message. And so I think it's really important that we're having this conversation. I think we're setting a good example that not only is it okay to talk about this stuff, but it's important. But going back to your journey, one of the things that I really loved and personally inspired me was that you said one of the habits that really saved you was relying more on or engaging more with nature over like digital media. So I'm curious about if you have any advice for people who in general kind of transitioning off of media to be more in nature, but then also I guess thinking about Boston, thinking about DC, thinking about LA, people who live in cities who don't really have access to green spaces. I don't know if you have any suggestions for that situation either.
Yeah, and I'd be angry if I didn't separate, you use the term digital media. I think what I said, although I'll go back and check, is social media, right?
Yeah,
So,
social media.
but you're correct, right? So I have to be honest, I've given up social media, um,
All of it?
all of it.
What
But
about
that,
LinkedIn?
but that does, yeah, no, LinkedIn too, which is
Okay.
which is honestly one of the things that has um stumped me on what I do with the health, a healthier executive, which is what I'm trying to do. Because I unfortunately know that that's the world we live in. And that, by the way, of all the things that I said um, on my summary that you've seen about like the 5 things that I did, this one is the hardest. And it's free, right? There's no cost to it, but it's definitely the hardest because of the world we live in right now. Um, Regardless of relying on nature or not, meaning using nature to replace digital/social media, social media, I think, has its own sort of challenges. But as
Mhm.
I said, I've given up social media. I'm also on news websites probably 5 to 10 times a day, and they make me maybe as crazy as the social media did. Um, and so when you say digital media, now I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, I really need to be a little bit more discerning with what I consume for even digital media, right? So I'm off social media. I'm still very much on digital media, which I think is like required to live a life these days.
No, for real, it
Um,
is.
so it's super hard. Um, and I would say, because I use nature, and I'll get to your question, but like I use nature as the time equation with giving up media, right? So I had all this time now, so what was I going to do? So that's where sort of the nature came in, and that took some time for me to even get there. Um, but replacing it with anything positive, right? So um, that's going to be better than feeds and scrolling and comments and AI slop. Um, I
Definitely.
recently picked up pickleball. So I
Mom,
now
didn't you do that too?
Yes, I love pickleball.
It's the new craze. I might have
Yeah.
to try.
Yeah, and I'm a fanatic, so now I'm doing that to marry with the nature side, right? So, but your question is a good one. So I've lived in a city pretty much all my life. And there is likely green spaces in the cities, the major metropolitans, especially in this country, although maybe Southwest would be a challenge. But um, there are definitely things, right, you can do. Um, and it gets a little sort of mystical here, right? But like find a tree, um, find a patch of grass, as long as it's not, not next to a vacant lot with all kinds of trash in it, So, um, you know, anything natural, I think, could replace my saying like, oh, I spend time in nature, right? Anything natural, right? You could find the tree and, it's not just find these things, it's sort of be aware of them, right? Contemplate what's going on. How long has it been there? Are the roots underneath the street? Like, because eventually your street's probably going to be cracking, and someone's going to be out there paving it, right? So there's all these things that you can sort of be aware of as you're spending time either in nature or with nature. This morning I spend a significant amount of time with undomesticated farm animals now these days. Um, Again, nature, right? So, but then short of any of that, right? Because thankfully we live in a place where I can go seek those things out. Maybe you don't.
Right. And
Yeah.
Greg, I love that you say 20 minutes. I was just talking to a client, again, younger generation, who said, I really want to manage my time on screen because he does measure it and it's over 8 hours a day.
I'm not surprised by that in the least.
Yeah.
And which is insane because then if you start doing the math, because I'm also a numbers geek, you start doing the math on that,
Mm,
it's pretty scary when you think about, okay, add up your sleeping time, add up your
mm.
time awake, and then add up your screen time. And it's again, I think 8 hours is like these days is probably average.
Yeah.
I think the
Definitely, I make all my students check out their screen time. We do a project on kind of social media and mental health, and I have them kind of reflect on that, and it gets funny. But I do think,
yeah,
you
funny.
said, yeah, 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 we try to make light of it. But no, I really appreciate you said the word awareness a lot, and I think that's a big thing. And I just wanted to add like one suggestion there because, I'm also kind of in a city area. But I joined Mom, I think I joined like a Facebook page on plants, on mushrooms, on local insects, and my mom got me a really nice camera. So even when I'm walking my dog and in the city, I still stop and I'm like, oh, that's that mushroom, or look at this wildflower and take a picture. So you can still kind of, learn about, what's nature in your local community and kind of when you start learning about that, you start to pick it out in person a lot more, which I think is cool. So I think being aware is really important as well. But sorry, Mom,
Yeah.
go.
No, lots of really great ideas there, Greg. Thank you for sharing. And again, a lot of accessible things. So I love it. And I'm thinking about documentaries and just National Geographic documentaries, right? Can that really bring us in. So thank you for all of those. So now I'm thinking about wellness, right? This significant journey that you've had and aiming to, and we want to center wellness. And I know, and I believe, and this is with my rose-colored glasses, I think that organizations are doing a better job centering this, really thinking about employee well-being and so on. So there's just a bit of a shift. Can we do better? Absolutely. But what I wanted to raise is the stigma for men to speak openly about mental health is very real, still exists and need some help there, right? To kind of open that up as raw and fearful that we might be, and again, that sense of vulnerability. But when you look back on your journey, what conditions might employers cultivate to help someone realize it's safe to talk about?
Yeah, we've talked about this a lot. We talked about it at work. We talked about it after work. We talked about it recently. I think a lot about that question as I'm sure people are thinking like, if I had had the resources that I think I would have needed, would it have made a difference? I don't think it would have because of what you just said, right? All these resources that are given to employees now with these wellness programs, they're great. They're great resources. But I would guess, you probably have data, that it's a very small percentage of people who take
Use.
use them,
Yeah, it's
right?
true.
And that's like that seems like it's worse than even not having them, right? It's like, oh, we spent all this money and time and energy debating and getting and paying for and signing contracts and maintenance of these softwares and then like people don't use them, right? Because there's the I think it is. I think it's the shame of it, right? Like so I appreciate the efforts because the efforts, by the way, weren't there when I started my career. There was nothing. There was zero. By the end of my career, there was a lot, right? So that's a big gap between zero and a lot.
Mm.
Um, I think the only thing that would have made a difference for me and will make a difference in the long term is if leadership in the company talk about it
Mm.
and not talk about it like, hey, this is what's available, put it up on the screen, here's a hyperlink, you'll get an email that'll be on a shared drive, whatever. Like, I'm talking about it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I called that number and I got, Sandra and she told me X, Y, and Z, and she
Mm.
hooked me up with this person who's in my, area. And they really talked a lot about your zip code because they really want to, narrow down a radius. Like, even that would be helpful. And it's not, but
Mm.
one leader is not going to make a difference because one
Yeah.
leader doesn't talk to everybody in the company, right? So it requires a group of people at the top to start talking about it. And it would be even better to talk about it at a personal level. But I know that that's probably an unreasonable expectation. Um, Alex mentioned, like, oh, she admires me for saying all this stuff. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm doing it because it feels like life and death now.
Mm.
And through all my other sort of work that I've been doing over the last couple of years, to be able to potentially contribute even a iota, a drop into a
Mm.
subject that feels like life and death, it's probably the only opportunity that I'm going to get, right? Because I'm not a doctor, I'm not healing people hands-on, like I'm not doing that. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a, I'm not a nutritionist, right? There's all these things. I'm not an exercise coach. There's all these things that professions that can really make a difference in people's lives. Um, this is the thing that I might be able to do, right? Like
Mm.
simply tell people that like, yeah, I did all of these really crazy, amazing, wonderful, successful things in my career, but I then had to make the decision to leave and sort of blow it all up and throw it all away because I couldn't physically do it anymore. So for whatever reason, the shame has sort of left me.
Mm.
And I don't know whether that's simply because of talking about it or whether it's related to this sort of life or death sort of aha moment for me or like whatever. But like, not only do I not have the shame anymore, I feel like I need to like rein it in a little bit because um, there's a lot of people suffering around me,
Mm.
right? Family, friends, acquaintances, ex-coworkers, colleagues, whatever. And like I want to strangle some of them and be like, dude, like you're literally sick. Your body
Mm.
is sick. And please do the one thing, right? The biggest thing. Um we're not gonna, do the list of things, but like the number one thing that I would say to do is breathe.
Mm.
Breathe correctly, breathe with awareness, breathe often. Um,
Mm.
but and when I say breathe often, I don't mean breathe more. I simply mean breathe with awareness more often.
Mm.
That one thing I truly believe probably healed me of
Mm.
50% of the things that I was dealing with. And that sounds like crazy, whatever, but within 6 months of leaving and learning this sort of breathing stuff, the migraines, which I actually had well before my career,
Mm.
um, were gone.
Yeah.
stop.
And Greg, I want to ask, and Alex has some final questions, but I just want to ask for our listeners, if you were going to share quickly one breathing technique or exercise, is there any one that is a go-to for you? Because I know that there's plenty, but if there's one that you would share.
Yeah. Well, for me, the answer was nose breathing, right? Nasal breathing. And there's tons of information on nasal versus mouth breathing. So if you're a mouth breather, you start breathing through your nose, your life will change within 6 months.
Mm.
I guarantee it. Because I was like the bottom of the health pile, right? Like, so I'm thinking everybody has got to be better than I was. And it changed my entire life in 6 months.
Mm.
So nasal breathing would be the number one if that's your thing, being a mouth breather. If not, yeah, there's literally hundreds of breathing techniques out there. I would
Mhm.
actually say just mindful breathing, right? Breathing from your
Yeah.
belly because it requires awareness to breathe through your belly because we
Yeah.
all naturally breathe through our nose and lungs, which is fine, but it's not the best.
Yeah.
So breathing through your nose from your belly um, with awareness, I
Mm.
believe will change your life.
Yeah.
Mm.
I definitely agree. And like you said, Mom, if any of our listeners have any suggestions, definitely do drop that in the comments. But Greg, I have one more question for you before I get to just my final question. But so, you have this clear vision of a healthier executive now as a result of your experiences. I guess I'm wondering, what do you hope would be the impact of this on employees or on the company if leaders prioritized modeling this behavior? And what incentives do leaders have to model this type of behavior?
Holy smokes, this is your last question? I mean, this is a whole different episode.
Oh, okay. Don't worry about it then. Don't worry.
No, it's a great question.
You
Yeah, I mean, look, what I hope, because I'm also dealing with some perfectionist things that you guys are well aware of. You've talked about it, so I'm really, I'm trying to live what we're all preaching. I'm really not trying to like save the world here, right? Because even though I believe that if everybody in the whole world did any of these things, I do believe we probably would save the world, but that's way too much to ask for. So,
one step at a time.
yeah, one step at a time. Look, for me, what I'm looking for is to help like a couple people a year that are in a very similar situation to me, which was super high performer, currently very successful, um, but they've been diagnosed with like, I don't know, 3, 5, 10, 15 different things that
Mm.
are wrong, or their desk or their cabinet is filled with over-the-counter medicines.
Mhm.
Um, I can't, I'm embarrassed that I do have shame on. Like, I probably had a dozen over-the-counter medicines in my desk, right? I remember chugging Pepto-Bismol at the end. I mean, it was that crazy.
Yeah.
Um, so for me, it's simply just reaching a couple people, every year, right? And
Yeah.
um, and
I
that,
think
but
that's really important because even just impacting a few people a year, then they take that information and they share it. So even for everybody, if there's any way that you can help anybody, you can be kind to somebody today, you never know how far that will go. And yeah, even if it's just a few people a year, we don't know how far that will reach. So I think that's incredible, and I think that's a realistic goal.
yeah.
Um, but
But
so
but
my
but
final,
you
oh, go
but
ahead.
just so you know, if I believed the model could be if I believed the behavior could be modeled by leadership,
Yeah,
my hope would be that would have
trickle down.
like
Ripple
a
effect.
yeah, a ripple effect, a total
Yeah,
sea change, a monumental shift in working.
yeah,
Because that's we're going there anyway with AI, right? So there's going to be some monumental shift.
yeah,
Let's combine it with
Mm.
this ability to have really healthy employees, right? If AI gets rid of sickness, but we're all still sick because we're stressed out, that's going to be a really strange thing to happen in corporate America. And by the way, all these leaders are going to benefit from healthier workforces anyway.
Yeah.
Lisa, I'm sure you've already given all the stats about, you know, productivity, lost
Yep.
wages, sick
Engagement,
days, engagement,
retention.
right.
top work, quality work. I can tell
Yeah.
you right now, the last year and a half, my work output based on my own my own graph, my own paradigm, I was given probably like 80%,
Yeah.
which even at that I was dying, right? Like so, and I will say my 80% was probably better than most people's 100%, but that's just my own,
Yeah.
sort of thing. But I was literally dying inside, right? So
Mhm.
Yeah.
if I had had an outlet, I don't even know. Like again, I can't come up with a scenario that would have seen me sort of
Yeah.
continue, right? Because that wasn't my story, right? My story had to play out the way it had to play out.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, I agree with you, and I think there definitely is incentive, like we said, retention, productivity, more quality work. So I think that implementing some of these ideas and strategies and communication techniques would be really important. But my final question, really simple, just if you had, 30 seconds to impart your best advice or your final takeaway, what would that be for our
Yeah,
listeners?
I mean, like I said, in addition to the, talking about things, breathing as far as a very utilitarian piece of advice, the sort of the step back pause would it's not related to men. It can be anybody. It can be at any level, right? I mean, you come into the workforce, you're overwhelmed because everyone's throwing everything at you and you don't know what you're doing, you're learning all this stuff and you're overwhelmed there and you're also like learning how to be an adult. Then you're at the top, you're at the, CEO level and everything's coming at you and you're, all these different things. So like on both ends, everybody could benefit from just pausing. And I would say along with that pause, if you start listening to your body, now you're sort of, you're at least sniffing what's there. And I think it will probably send you down a path where you're going to end up healthier.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you, Greg. Thank you for all of your amazing advice. I definitely learned a lot. I know our listeners will as well. And thank you again for being our first guest. To everybody else who's watching, thank you. Please do like and subscribe. Don't hesitate to comment on the video with any questions or suggestions. You can also reach out to us at themother-daughter-download@gmail.com if you would like to get in contact with Mr. Greg Leach, then you can email us about that as well, and we will connect to you. But otherwise, make sure that you again subscribe and check in about 2 weeks for our next podcast on critical thinking. We will see you then.
Excellent. Great to have you, Greg.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye.